So yesterday we did some elimination for our systems and we focused mainly on the systems that had a zero pair already set up for you. So let me just go through the steps real quick one more time so that you guys have an understanding of how to solve with elimination. Step one, we align the equations so that our x variables are lined up, our y variables are lined up, and our c's are lined up. Then we identified a zero pair. Remember, zero pair was one of them was a positive, the other was a negative of the exact same number, a positive 4, a negative 4, or a positive 19 and a negative 19. Okay, so we identified where that zero pair existed. Step 3, we eliminated the zero pair and then added our remaining variables together and our c values together, and then solved the equation for that value, for that variable. Step 4, we substituted that variable's value into one of the original equations and then solved for the missing variable. And then step 5 was just that check process, just making sure that we understood that it was, the true solution. Okay, so yesterday we focused on using systems that already had the zero pair created. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a zero pair if one does not exist. So that's what our focus is on today. So let's go ahead and start with the following. If we've got negative 7x plus 2y is equal to 22, and then a negative 5x plus 8y is equal to 14. Okay, so I'm going to set up that process again. Step 1 is still to go ahead and align the equations. So we're aligning them so that our like variables are on top of each other. So negative 7x plus 12y equals 22. And then negative 5x plus 8y is equal to 14. All right. In a problem like this, what I need to notice is I don't have variables that are zero pairs, right? These are not zero pairs, these are not zero pairs. So what I have to now do is create the zero pair. So that's what step 2 is. Step 2 is now going to be to create my zero pair. So to create the zero pair, you first have to identify which variable you are going to go ahead and get rid of. So I like to look at the ones that seem to have an easier match. And in this case, either one of them would be easily created. I could create one with the x's, I could create one with the y's. It does not matter. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to focus on creating a zero pair out of the y's. So to create a zero pair, you have to create a value that is both the same number and opposite. So one of them is going to have to become a negative and the other one's going to have to stay a positive. For here, I'm looking for a common multiple that they could have. So multiples of 12 would be 12, 24, 36, 48, and so on and so forth. Multiples of 8 would be 8, 16, 24, and I'm going to stop right there because I said 24 for the 8. I also said 24 for the 12. That's a common multiple that they both have. So in order to make 12 into 24, I would have to multiply it by a 2. Well, I also have to make one of them a negative. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by a negative 2. But the thing is, if I multiply by a negative 2 for the 12y, I have to multiply all of that equation by a negative 2 to keep it the same. So I'm going to multiply this by a negative 2. And I'm going to multiply the 22 by a negative 2. That way it keeps my equation the same. It's still balanced. Then for my bottom, in order to make the 8 into a 24, Well, 8 times 3, so I would multiply by 3 to get 24. But again, I'd have to multiply everything by 3 in order to be able to keep it all the same and balanced. So I've created a zero pair now. So my top equation, because I'm multiplying everything by -2, I took this whole entire thing and I multiplied it by a -2, and I took this entire bottom equation and multiplied it by a +3, I'm going to rewrite what the equations are now. So -7 times -2 is going to give me a +14. So I have positive 14x. A positive 12y times -2 now gives me a negative 24y. And 22 times -2 gives me a negative 44. And now I'm going to revamp my bottom equation, multiplying the whole thing by a +3. So -5x times 3 gives me a negative 15x. A positive 8y times 3 gives me a positive 24y. 14 times 3 is going to give me a positive 42. Okay, and then here is my zero pair. There's my zero pair. So now step 3 is to eliminate that zero pair and then solve. So if I eliminate the zero pair, then I can go ahead and solve by combining these together. So a 14x and a negative 15x gives me a negative 1x. And then a negative 44 and a positive 42 gives me a negative 2. Then all I have to do is get x isolated, right? I need to solve for it. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1, and I get that x is going to be equal to a positive 2. From there, everything's still the same now. I just need to go on to step 4. I'm going to go ahead and substitute. Okay, so I pick any one of the equations. You know me, I like to go with the first one. So -7 times x plus 12 times y is equal to 22. I'm going to substitute. Instead of having an x, I'm going to substitute the positive 2 in. So -7 times 2 is going to give me that negative 14 plus the 12y is equal to 22. I then go ahead and solve by adding positive 14 to both sides. That gives me 12y is now equal to 36, and then I would divide both sides by 12. And that gives me y equals 3. And then, like always, we want to check. So in order to check, we have to use the second equation, which was the negative 5x plus 8y equals 14. Now again, keep in mind, I'm using the original equations when I substitute things in and when I solve and check. I have to use the original. You cannot use these new ones because if you made a mistake here, then it's going to check out like you did everything right, even though you didn't. So you need to use these ones to make sure that you're checking correctly. All right, so -5 times the x, so -5 times 2, plus 8 times my y, 8 times 3, and that needs to be set equal to 14. -5 times 2 is a -10. 8 times 3 is a positive 24. When I add 10 and 24 together, -10 and 24 together, that gives me a positive 14. So it does check out. That means my final answer is going to be a positive 2 and a positive 3. Okay, so again, the whole process is exactly the same. The only thing that's a little bit different is now that you have to create those zero pairs. So let's do another example on just creating the zero pair. I apologize, it's my dog in the background if you hear her. All right. So here's our next problem. We've got 8x minus 14y is equal to 10, and 9x minus 7y is equal to negative 15. Again, step 1, we want to go ahead and align. So we have 8x minus 14y is equal to 10, and we've got 9x minus 7y is equal to negative 15. All right, so in a situation like this, you want to focus on which one might be the easiest to create a zero pair from, which would happen to be the y's. The reason why it would be easy to create a zero pair from the y's is because one of the values is already, Starbucks, is already a multiple of the other. So here we have a negative 14y, and then here we have a negative 7y. 14 happens to be one of the multiples for 7, so we wouldn't have to even change the first equation at all. We would only have to change the second equation. Now remember, both of these are negatives, but we don't want two negatives. One of them has to be a positive. So we're going to go ahead and change the bottom one by multiplying the entire thing by a negative 2. So that way it changes this to a positive 14, because a negative times a negative becomes a positive, and we want that opposite. Remember, when you are changing it, you are multiplying the entire statement by that negative 2. Okay, so the first equation is going to stay untouched. 8x minus 14y is equal to 10. Now, I multiplied by a negative 2 so that I could get that positive 14 here for my zero pair. But I also had to multiply this by a negative 2. So 9x times negative 2 gives me a negative 18x. We then have a positive 14y, and that's going to equal a positive 30. So here's my zero pair. Okay, the next step is to go ahead and eliminate that zero pair and then combine the rest of the terms together. So 8x and a negative 18x is going to give me a negative 10x. 10 and 30 is going to give me 40, and then I just solve. We'll divide both sides by a negative 10. So that's going to give me x equaling a negative 4. Okay, from there, I just pick one of the original equations to substitute it into. So the original equation that I'm going to go ahead and substitute it into is going to be my first one. So I've got 8x minus 14y is equal to 10. So instead of 8 times x, it's going to become 8 times negative 4 minus 14y is equal to 10. 8 times negative 4 becomes a negative 32 minus 14y equaling 10. We would then go ahead and add 32 to both sides. That minus 14y now comes down as a negative 14y. And then 10 plus 32 is 42. And then the last step is to just divide both sides by the negative 14. And that would give you y equaling negative 3. And then like always, you want to check. So for our check, we use the other equation, 9x minus 7y equals negative 15. And then just substitute the x as negative 4 and the y as a negative 3. 9 times the negative 4 is going to give you a negative 36. Minus 7 times a negative 3 is a negative 21, so you have minus a negative 21 is equal to negative 15. And negative 36 minus a negative 21 is going to give you negative 15. Because minus a negative is the real thing, it's saying plus. Okay, since it pans out, works out just fine, x is negative 4 and y was negative 3. All right, we'll do one more example. I accidentally wrote sorry, that was supposed to be a number 2. All right, number 3. We've got a negative 5x plus 2y is equal to 32, and 2x plus 3y is equal to 10. Right? Step 1, align them. Negative 5x plus 2y equals 32. 2x plus 3y is equal to 10. Step 2, we pick out which ones we decide that we're going to go ahead and use as our zero pair. I think I'll go ahead and get rid of the x's. Only reason I would go ahead and do the x is because they're both already opposite numbers of each other. They're opposites. One's a negative, the other's a positive. So I only have to focus on just multiplying, right, by a positive value. I don't have to change the sign. So I'm not having to multiply things by negatives. I can just focus on multiplying the whole thing by positives because I've already got opposite signs. So I just need to figure out the multiple, the common multiple that 5 and 2 share, which happens to be 10. 5 times 2 will give you 10. 2 times 5 will give you 10. So we're going to multiply the first expression. We're going to multiply everything by 2. And the second expression, we're going to multiply everything by 5. So I'm going to multiply negative 5x times 2. 2y gets multiplied by 2. 32 gets multiplied by 2. On my bottom expression, the 2x is going to get multiplied by 5, the 3y is going to get multiplied by 5, and the 10 is going to get multiplied by 5. Okay, so my new expressions are going to become negative 10x plus 4y is equal to 64. My bottom expression becomes a positive 10x plus 15y, and that's equal to 50. So here's my zero pairs. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the x's. So I cross those off and then combine the other terms. 4y and 15y becomes 19y. 64 and 50 become 114. I then just divide both sides by 19. And that gives me y is equal to 6. From there, I substituted into one of the originals. So I'm going to go with the first. And remember, we go with an original, not with a revamped. We go with the original. So I have negative 5x plus 2y is equal to 32. This now becomes negative 5x plus 2 times 6 is equal to 32. So negative 5x plus 12 is equal to 32. I would then subtract the 12 from both sides. That would give me a negative 5x is now equal to a positive 20. I would then divide both sides by negative 5, and I would get x is equal to negative 4. From there, I would then just go ahead and check. Okay, so I have 2x plus 3y is equal to 10. So this now becomes 2 times negative 4 plus 3 times 6, and that's equal to 10. 2 times negative 4 is going to give me a negative 8. 3 times 6 is a positive 18. And when I add negative 8 and 18 together, I get a positive 10, so it checks out. So then I have negative 4 as my x value, positive 6 as my y. Okay, so you guys are going to have an IXL